they happened to have a coffee bar in the lobby of the Four Seasons in Vegas. And so one afternoon, I went and bought myself a cup of coffee, and the barista working that day was a kid named Noah. Noah was funny and charming and engaging, and I spent far too long buying a cup of coffee because I just so enjoyed talking to Noah. So as is my nature, I asked Noah, do you like your job? And without skipping a beat, Noah said, I love my job. Now, in my line of work, that's significant. Like is rational. I like the people, I like the work, you know, I get paid well, I like my job. Love is emotional. It's a higher order connection, right? Like, do you love your wife? I like her a lot, right? Clearly, it's clearly a different standard, right? Yeah. So when Noah said, I love my job, my ears perked up. This kid has an emotional connection to his work. So immediately I followed up and said, tell me specifically what the Four Seasons is doing that you would say to me you love your job. And again, without skipping a beat, Noah said, throughout the day, managers will walk past me and ask me how I'm doing, ask me if there's anything that I need to do my job better, not just my manager, any manager. And then he said, I also work at another hotel. And there the managers walk past us and catch us when we do something wrong. There the managers are always trying to drive performance and make sure we hit our numbers. He said, there I'd like to keep my head below the radar, get through the day and just collect my paycheck. Only at the Four Seasons do I feel I can be myself. Now, this is the exact same human being working at two different companies, and yet our experience of him will be profoundly different, not because of him, but because of the leadership environment in which he works. Odd question. The question is, how do we create an environment in which our people can work at their natural best? And that is the art of leadership. It's creating an environment in which relationships can thrive, in which trust can thrive. And we all know what it feels like to be on a trusting team, right? It means that we feel psychologically safe enough to raise our hand and say, I made a mistake, or I need help, or I'm having trouble at home and it's affecting my work, or I'm scared, or I don't know what to do. Without any fear of humiliation or retribution, but rather to say these things with the absolute confidence that someone on our team will rush to support us. Unfortunately, we also all know what it feels like not to work on a trusting team, where admitting any of those things could hurt your chances of promotion, could hurt your chances of, you could be humiliated. And so when we work on teams where leadership is creating an environment where trust is at a premium, we force our people to come to work and lie, hide, and fake, where they're pretending that they've made no mistakes, they're lying, hiding, and faking, and eventually things will crack and things will eventually break. And when you talk about reinvention and you talk about innovation and you talk about challenging the status quo or whatever it is, necessarily there's risk, and necessarily there are mistakes, and necessarily there's stupid ideas. And you have to create an environment in which that's good. The alternative is everybody playing it safe, which is not the way that leads to vast or significant improvement. How can we ensure that we're changing with times, technology, culture, politics, and tastes, rather than just trying to beat our competitor? And you see it across industries. Publishing, for example. The internet showed up and they saw it and they thought it was nice, and they, as it took on, they sort of, I guess they were interested in it, they sort of played defense. And then Amazon showed up, and Amazon went to all of them and said, hey, you want to invest in us? And they all said no. Well, now they're all playing catch up. They're all playing defense. Netflix went to Blockbuster and said, want to buy us? And Blockbuster said no. The rest of the TV and movie industry were too busy comparing who had higher ratings, and they completely missed the fact that Netflix has now completely reinvented television. I find that fascinating. General Motors was destroying its own electric vehicles to protect its old business, and now they're all rushing to catch up with Tesla. I think this is hilarious. And it's the little companies, the Netflixes, the Amazons, the Teslas, that get ignored, that aren't seen as a threat, that end up defining and redefining entire marketplaces. Now, this is not unique to small companies. Big companies can absolutely redefine. The problem is big companies are more obsessed with their finite goals. Big companies are more obsessed with beating their competitors, and little companies are obsessed with their vision.
Little companies are obsessed with this outsized vision that outstrips the resources they have, right? Somebody says, we're gonna do this, and everybody looks around and goes, we don't have the money for that, we don't have the talent for that, I guess we'll have to be creative. And I think this is one of the opportunities for big companies. As they get big, their visions get smaller. They become goals that they can just do a back plan for. There's nothing inherent that a big company shouldn't be innovative. But to your point before, they become risk averse, they become stable, and at the end of the day, it takes huge vision. What I imagine is a huge corporation, a multi-billion-dollar corporation, that someone will say, we imagine a world that's so crazy and so idealistic that in this large corporation, they all look around and go, we don't have the money for that. We don't have the talent for that. I guess we'll have to be creative, which scares the heck out of the investor community. But remember, all of those companies were founded by, whether it's your Steve Jobs or all of these companies, Salesforce, they all started by young people who had no experience and only had vision. And I think there's no reason why big companies cannot be innovative, but I think it's about pushing their own boundaries and allowing for entrepreneurship.
I'm fascinated by the concept of control, and throughout this pandemic, and even the social unrest from some of the social stuff that's happening in our country, it's been fascinating to understand how people feel and how control relates as to how they respond. When we feel out of control, it actually increases our stress dramatically. There's been lots of studies on this. There was a great study that was done, I think in the 70s, called the Whitehall studies, where back in the 70s, there was a group of social scientists who wanted to study a phenomenon that they labeled and called executive stress syndrome, right? The belief that if you make your way up the ranks, you feel more stress, right? Okay. And so they wanted to study executive stress, and they did it in Whitehall, which is the halls of government in the UK, because they could account for standardized healthcare. There wouldn't be variances in healthcare. What they discovered was there is no such thing as executive stress syndrome. It was completely made up. And what they discovered is as you make your way up the ranks of an organization, your stress levels actually go down. And the people who suffer the highest stress levels are actually people at some of the lowest levels. And the reason had nothing to do with responsibility, it had nothing to do with number of hours worked, it had to do with feeling in control. That when somebody's more senior in their career, they have a little more control as to the direction of their day, the direction of their career. When you're at the lowest level, somebody's always telling you what to do, and somebody's always correcting your behavior, so is always catching you when you do something wrong, and they find the highest rates of diabetes and some cancers and heart disease actually at the people who felt the least in control. And so giving people control, giving people agency, letting people know that they have say in the course of their career, or if they screw something up, to give them an opportunity to try and mend it, or catching people doing things right, which is something we could all do better at. We catch people doing things wrong. Right. You only send an email when something went wrong, but you never send an email when everything went right. It's all about giving people a sense of control and letting them work together and figure things out. And it has a dramatic impact on how people feel about themselves, and more important, how they relate to each other. When we trust people, we want to give them agency and empower them. I think the challenge is what goes first, And I think for anybody in a leadership position, I think one of the things that they fail to appreciate is that trusting is one of the risks a leader has to take. And I've never heard a great leader say, "Prove to me why I should trust you." Rather, leaders show up and trust. And I hear it, I get pushback all the time. Well, I didn't get to choose my team. You can't ask me to trust them at the gate. Well, you didn't get to choose your children. You love them out the gate. Leaders take the risk to trust. And it's actually the opposite. It's the team that says, well, prove to us why we should trust you. And it's the leader who has to demonstrate trustworthiness that the team would trust them. But actually, leaders have to take the risk to trust their teams. And the more they give trust, the more they get trust. The more they give trust, the more they're practicing empowerment. I'm going to let you do that. As one great leader that I adore, her name is General Laurie Robinson. She says to her teams, "There's nothing you can break that I can't help fix." I just love that notion. That I'm here to help you, even if you get it wrong.
There are two things that I think that great leaders need to have: empathy and perspective. And I think these things are very often forgotten. Leaders are so often so concerned about their status or their position in an organization, they actually forget their real job. And the real job of a leader is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in our charge. And I don't think people realize this, and I don't think people train for this. When we're junior, our only responsibility is to be good at our jobs. That's all we really have to do. And some people actually go get advanced educations so that they can be really good at their jobs, accountants or whatever, right? And you show up and you work hard, and the company will give us tons and tons of training how to do our jobs. They'll show us how to use the software. They'll send us away for a few days to get trained in whatever it is that we're doing for the company. And then they expect us to go be good at our jobs. And that's what we do. We work very hard. And if you're good at your job, they'll promote you. And at some point, you'll get promoted to a position where we're now responsible for the people who do the job we used to do, but nobody shows us how to do that. And that's why we get managers and not leaders. Because the reason our managers are micromanaging us is because they actually do know how to do the job better than us. That's what got them promoted. Really what we have to do is go through a transition. Some people make it quickly, some people make it slowly, and unfortunately some people will never make that transition at all. Which is we have to go through this transition of being responsible for the job and then turning into somebody who's now responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. And as I said before, one of the great things that is lacking in most of our companies is that they are not teaching us how to lead. And leadership is a skill like any other. It is a practicable, learnable skill. And it is something that you work on. It's like a muscle. If you practice it all the days, you will get good at it and you will become a strong leader. If you stop practicing, you will become a weak leader. Like parenting, everyone has the capacity to be a parent. Doesn't mean everybody wants to be a parent, and doesn't mean everybody should be a parent. Leadership is the same. We all have the capacity to be a leader. Doesn't mean everybody should be a leader, and it doesn't mean everybody wants to be a leader. And the reason is because it comes at great personal sacrifice. Remember, you're not in charge, you're responsible for those in your charge. That means things like when everything goes right, you have to give away all the credit. And when everything goes wrong, you have to take all the responsibility.